Hi everyone, this is Niall. We're going to talk about functions. Now we've already talked about some basic functions like the sum function, the min function, the max function, and the average function, but there are lots of other functions in Excel. I'm going to go over to the formulas tab here and you'll see that there's all these categories of functions. So here are all the financial functions. There's a bunch of them. Here are all the math and trig functions, and I think there's 400 functions altogether. So anyways, go ahead and open up this Excel functions file, and you're going to follow along with me as I show you how to use some of these functions. So we're going to start out with the if function here. So on the first sheet in this workbook, we've got a spreadsheet that deals with Bob's bonuses. So he sells tires, and these are all the tires that he sold for the different months, so January through July. Now you can see here in row 11 that he gets a bonus for the month if he sells more than 100 tires. So we need to calculate his bonus here, and to do that, we're going to use the if function. So I'm going to make that cell active, that's D3, and then we start our functions with the equal sign, and the function that we want to use is called the if function here, so I'll type in the function name, which is if, and then I'm going to put my opening parentheses there. Now there's three parts that go inside the parentheses. The first part is what we're checking. So what we're checking here is to see if he sold more than 100 tires. So that's over here. The tire sold is in B3. So I'm going to click on B3, and then I'm going to put the greater than sign and then type in 100. So that's the first part. That's the test that we're applying here to see if this is true or false. So if B3 is greater than 100, then we'll apply the formula in the second part. So to separate the parts that go into this function, we use commas. So the second part is going to be the formula we use if the first part is true. So the formula that we want to use here would be his base pay and then multiplied by 5%. So I clicked on cell C3 and I'm going to put the asterisks here for multiply, and then I can type in 5%. So that's the formula that we're going to use if the first part's true, and then this last part is going to be the formula that we use if the first part is not true. So in this case, he gets a 0 bonus, so that's a simple one. We'll just type in 0 for that. So at this point, I'm just about done with my formula. I just need to put the closing parentheses in place here, like that, and I can hit enter, and we can see that he does not get his bonus for January because he didn't meet the condition. He didn't sell 100 tires or more than 100 tires actually. So at this point, I can go ahead and use the fill handle and fill that formula down through all the months. And let's just check this out and make sure that we got it right. So it looks like in February he did meet his quota, so he gets his $200 bonus. March and April he didn't. In May he sold 110 tires, so he gets his bonus. Now look, in June here he sold 100 tires, but remember that our test here was he has to sell more than 100 tires, so he doesn't get his bonus for June, and he does get his bonus for July. Okay, so that's the if function. Let's just go ahead and finish out this here and calculate the formula for his total pay. So I'm going to go to cell E3, make that the active cell, type in the equal sign, and his total pay is going to be his base pay. So that's C3. I click on cell C3, then I enter the plus sign, and then it's going to be his base pay plus his bonus. So I'll click on cell D3, that's his bonus, and then I can hit enter. So we can see that his total pay is just his base pay for January, but we'll copy this down using the fill handle, and it should calculate his total pay for each month. All right, let's switch over to the next worksheet here, which is the PMT function, and PMT stands for payment. Now, I gotta admit, this one's a little bit contrived, and what I mean by that is you kind of have to know how this works. But I wanted to do this one because it could come in really handy for pretty much anybody who's considering taking out a loan, and that's probably all of us. So let's just say we want to buy a new car, and the car costs $10,000. So usually it's not so much the cost of the car, the sticker price, that determines whether we can buy it or not. What it really is our monthly payment. So we figure out what our monthly payment is, and if we can afford that every month, then we can decide to buy the car or not. So it's usually the monthly payment that really drives our decision, not necessarily the sticker price. So I've got some data started for us. So let's just say we're going to borrow $10,000, and let's say the interest rate nowadays is 12%. Now that's ridiculously high right now, but it's convenient for our little example here. And in order to use this payment function, we need to figure out the monthly interest rate, not the annual interest rate. But we usually talk in terms of annual interest rate. So to figure out our monthly interest rate, that's basically, we're going to put a formula in here. That's going to be the annual rate. So I'll click on cell B3 and then divided by 12. So I'm going to type in divided by 12, and that will give us our monthly interest rate. So the annual interest rate divided by the number of months in a year. So like I said, I kind of set this up so it's going to come out to be 1% per month. So actually I want to format this differently. So I'm going to go to the Home tab here and use the percent formatting. And now our loan is going to be for 5 years. So that's usually what a car loan is. So the other thing that we need for this payment function to work is we need to figure out how many payments we're going to make all together. So we're making monthly payments over 5 years. So what we really want here is a formula that's going to, if we've got a 5-year loan and we're making monthly payments, we want to figure out how many total payments that is. So I'm going to type the equal sign in here, and we're going to say the term of our loan in years, and that has to be multiplied by 12. So that'll be the total number of payments. So I'll type that in, and we'll see that we're going to be making 60 payments overall. Okay, now I'm ready to use the payment function to figure out what my monthly payment's going to be. So I've got my active cell is B7 here. Let's go ahead and type in the formula. So it's going to be equals, and then we want to use the PMT. Whoops. PMT. That stands for payment. So I'll type that in and then put my opening parentheses in. Now you can see I'm kind of getting a little bit of help here. These are kind of giving me tips on what I need to enter. I guess in this case this doesn't help that much. I'll just walk you through it and explain it. And like I said, you kind of have to know how this function works, and you have to set up everything perfectly, but it can be super useful if you're thinking of taking out a loan. So the first thing that we want to feed into this function, the first part that goes in the parentheses, is going to be the monthly interest rate. So remember we had the annual interest rate, but we needed to figure out the monthly interest rate so that we could feed it into this function. So I'm going to click on the monthly interest rate, which is in cell B4, and then I'm going to put a comma, and the next thing that we need to enter into this formula, or function I should say, is the number of payments that we're going to be making. So that's over here in B6, and then I'm going to put a comma, and the third part that we need to enter into this formula is the loan amount, and the loan amount is $10,000. That's it. So at this point I'm pretty much done. I just have to put the closing parentheses in place, and this will figure out what our monthly payment would be for a $10,000 loan at 12% annual interest rate over 5 years. Here I want to show you, here is the magic of Excel here. Once I've got everything in place, I can start fiddling with the numbers. So let's say that we can't afford $222 every month. So we might want to say, well, maybe we should only take out an $8,000 loan. So I can go over here to B2, and I'm going to change this to $8,000. So I'll type in 8,000 here and hit enter, and then everything else will automatically update. So you can, and I guess these other variables didn't change, but you can see that our monthly payment did. So if I look at this and say, yeah, I think I can afford $177 a month, so I'm going to take out an $8,000 loan and get that car. Okay, like I said, I wanted to show you this one because it's a little bit complicated, but could be very useful if you're thinking about taking out a loan. All right, one last function here. Um, let's go over to the last worksheet, which is the COUNTIF function. So what I've got here is, let's say we have well, we're selling food and drinks, and we categorize our products. So our categories are food and drinks. So these are the items that we sold during the day, and we want to figure out how many items in each category we sold. So what we're trying to do is figure out how many food items and how many drink items we sold throughout the day. So I want to put those over here in column F, and I want to use the COUNTIF function for that. So I'm going to go to column F3 here and make that the active cell, and then I'll type in an equal sign, and then our function name is going to be COUNTIF, and so I set that up with the function name in the opening parentheses. And then what I want to do is select the range, so you can see here that after every item I put its category. So here's the range of data that we want to include in our counts. So I'll just select that whole range, and then that's the first part of this function. I'll put a comma there, and then the second part is what we're matching. So I could either type food here like this. I think this will work. And hit enter. Oh no, that doesn't work. Maybe I need to put that in parentheses. So, or I'm sorry, in quotes. So I'm going to put quotes around food here. Okay, that's what it was. So you can type in what we're looking for in this range, and it'll give you a count of all the matches. So that's one way to do this. I'm going to go ahead and do this in a slightly different way here. I'm going to set it up like we had it before. I'm just going to erase everything up until the second part that we need to add and put into the COUNTIF function. And what I can do is I can just click on a cell that has the value that I'm trying to count. So I can click right here, and that just gives me a cell reference. But since food is in that cell, that's what it's going to use in the formula. So I'll put the parentheses here and finish it off. So what we can get out of this is that we sold 5 food items throughout the day. Let's go ahead and do this for drinks. So put my active cell in F4, then I'm going to type in the equal sign, and then the function name, which is COUNTIF, then my opening parentheses, and I want to choose this range here. This is the range of data that I'm trying to get my counts from. That's the first part of the formula, is the range, and then put a comma, and then the second part is I'm looking for drinks, so I could type in drinks if I wanted to, but don't forget the double quotes around drinks, or I could just click on a cell that has the value that I'm looking for. So I'll click on cell, I think that's F4 here, and then I'll put my closing parentheses on, and you can see that throughout the day I sold 6 drink items. There you have it. So there's a little taste of functions. All right, thanks for tuning in. Talk later.